Stacey Clark. I'm the CEO of Circus Talk. Welcome, everybody. Circus Talk is an online career and casting platform for circus and performing arts. We offer job listings, a talent database, the very database that talent seekers like Julien use to find talent, and lots of career development content. Pro Talk is our regular, every couple of months or so, online gathering. And the goal is to bring talent seekers and talent together so that we can just have the kinds of conversations that a virtual platform allows for. So it's very much a meet and greet. And what we're going to do in the first half is have conversation, understand where Julien has come from and where he is today. And then we will talk a little bit about the behind the scenes as it works in casting at Disneyland Paris. And then at about the halfway mark, we will open the floor. And that's where I really encourage and invite all of you to get into some questions. And because it's an intimate setting, you can be pretty specific. This is about you and your needs and your goals and what it is that you need to know. So don't be shy. I prepare you now so that you can get some of those questions at the ready for when we transition into the Q&A. What I'll do, though, is actually ask everybody to now turn off their cameras and turn off their audio in order that we have the full-on screen for Julien and give him the full platform. And then I'll invite you guys back in a little bit later on. First, I'd like to do a land recognition. I am based in Montreal, Canada. And so I begin by acknowledging that this Circus Talk Pro Talk is being hosted on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ga-Nyungahaga Nation is recognized as the custodian of the lands and the waters on which I live. I'm going to say this again. Tiohtià:ke, which is Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future of our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal and certainly even broader community. As I mentioned, I'm Stacey Clark, and I'm a white cis woman in my early 50s. I have a medium sporty build and long blonde hair. And today I'm wearing a dark red shirt with a little red shawl over my shoulders because it's chilly in my office. And my pronouns are she, her. I would very much now like to introduce Julien Panel, who is the talent casting director at Disneyland Paris. So I pass you the torch.
Hi everyone. So it's very nice to be here and to meet everyone. So my name is Julien Panel. I am 40 years old and I live in France, to be more precise in Annecy, near the French Alps. I'm working mostly from home and traveling to Paris at Disneyland nearly five days a month, and for auditions as well. That's where I do the physical description test, Stacey, correct? Yes, so I am a white male. I'm wearing a white t-shirt with colored stripes. I am medium built, 5'7", yes. Yeah, that'll be it, I think, with my physical description.
Perfect, that's you.
All right. Should I go on with my work description and bio? Yes.
Yeah, let's do that. What I'd like you to do is sort of talk us through your own career path. Yeah. Because I know you well, and full disclosure, folks, I've had the pleasure of working with Julien in the past. So we already have a terrific relationship and a friendship. So I'm going to step out of that conversation and just let you self-present. Yeah. Which, by the way, is exactly the kind of self-tape that we talk about on the platform, a sort of a presentation to camera, letting people like Julien know in a nutshell what you're all about. So yeah. Let's start at the start with your sporting career.
Yes, I was an artistic gymnast for pretty much my entire childhood and early adult life. In part of the national team in France. And I moved on to Cirque du Soleil right after that. So I joined, I was hired by Cirque du Soleil for creation of a new show called Corteo. That was back in 2005. That's some years ago. When I was hired for an act called Tournic, which is basically high bars plugged together, and it's a group act that was composed of ex-international gymnasts. And that's where I made my transition from an athlete to an artist. And I was quite privileged to work with Daniele Finzi Pasca, who's a stage director who worked with Cirque du Soleil on several shows, but as well with Cirque Éloise mainly. And he's got his own company now in Switzerland. So for me, that was one of the highlights of my career, actually, to really become an artist, to know what it's like to be on stage compared to a competitive career when you're competing for yourself with judges that give you, notes compared to the stage where you work for an audience and with a bunch of people that are your colleagues but become your friends, because it was a touring show, and that's where I had the time of my life actually for nearly 4 years. So that was definitely one of the highlights of my career. Then I moved on to Las Vegas when I was on a permanent show. So a show that was created on the life of Viva Elvis. The show was called On the Life of Elvis Presley, and the show was called Viva Elvis. And I was there as well for as an acrobat. Please enter the meaning of your...
I think we have a new person joining us.
Yeah. Right. So I was part of the Viva Elvis show when I was an acrobat as well. Started to go into aerial a little bit. So changing a bit more my transition from an artist, an ex-gymnast to more of a circus artist. And that's where I learned a lot in aerial. I was doing straps as well as aerial hoop. And I became as well a coach within the cast, so starting to have some managerial responsibilities within the company. And after that, I did a short contract on the show called The Beatles' Love, a show based on the Beatles' life in Las Vegas as well, when I was doing mainly and only aerial apparatus, aerial acts. So I was basically doing bungee straps, bungee catching couples, a bunch of things. And that's where I was started to really get comfortable into the circus acts. So that was really, really different from gymnastics. And that's where I felt like my full transition into a circus artist was made. And shortly after that, that was big part of my personal life. I had kids, and that's when I started to think of, okay, the artist life was maybe coming to an end for me, and there was an opportunity to join the casting team in Las Vegas for Cirque du Soleil, which I did in 2014, and later on led that team, a team composed of five people, where we were hiring the artists for our Las Vegas shows and in Orlando. And I was leading a team of specialists that was hiring dancers, characters, clowns, and I was keeping the acrobatic parts of the job while leading that team. And that's where I was working with Stacy, and she was my colleague in Montreal, and I was based in Las Vegas. And then later on, I decided that after nearly 14 years living in the States and Canada, I was ready to come back to my home country in France, which I did in 2017. And I continued to work for Cirque du Soleil as a talent scout based in France, in Europe. And I was scouting new talents mainly in the European territory, but I was also in charge of the gymnastics profiles worldwide. So I was a lot on the road. So, you know, covering international competitions in gymnastics, circus festivals in Europe, going to the circus schools in Europe. So we may have crossed paths from artists that I see here or not. And so that was my job until the COVID hit, and then went into a personal project for a little time, and then joined the casting team of Disneyland Paris quite recently. Actually, I'm there since February of 2022. So that's about it. I think I covered
That sounds pretty
it all.
comprehensive. And here's a couple things I just wanted to bounce for our viewers and listeners is it's this idea of chapters. And I find it really interesting when people tell their story, how their their own version of this journey comes to life. So the transition that you mentioned from athlete to artist, which was not overnight, becoming immersed in a space where you took on additional responsibilities also as a coach, which is very real in a lot of performing environments where artist coaches or the transition from artist to coach can happen. The casting one is also very interesting, and I can tell you firsthand that in the hiring of scouts and advisors, having that very real experience and the eye, the understanding, the ability to evaluate potential and see talent and see where talent could go, if not today, but with the appropriate training or in the right type of environment, all of that kind of experience that Julien has described uh, obviously is extremely useful and beneficial in the casting milieu. So now, after what essentially amounts to a hearty career at a very large circus company, you're at an even larger company that it includes among its many diversions on stage performance. So let's dig into what's your job? What do you do as the in casting at
Yeah.
Disneyland Paris?
So I'm talent casting director. It's a big name for for what I do, but I'm not the director of anyone. I'm directing auditions and being part of making choices for the cast that we have in our shows. So I'm mainly responsible for casting our acrobatic and stunt profiles for our shows that are within the parks. We've got two parks at Disneyland Paris, one called One Disney Studio and the other one called Parc Disneyland. And I'm also in charge of special events. Special events means that we have events that are made for private companies, so private events, or we companies can book the park for themselves and have entertainment plugged to it. So I am taking care of booking this entertainment for those special events, and that goes beyond acrobatics. So I can be hiring balloon sculpture to makeup artists to magicians, tons of different kind of performances, which is much more diverse from what I'm doing for the shows within the parks. That is only for myself, actually, only acrobatics and stunts. But the casting team is composed of a little bit like at Cirque du Soleil or other performing arts companies. It's composed of casting directors in charge of singers, in charge of dancers, in charge of comedians, etc., etc.
So I think we can say it like it's subject matter experts, people who are specialists in that particular genre or discipline who
Yeah,
take on the casting responsibility for those disciplines.
exactly.
Do I understand correctly then that the special events profiles, those artists are not the same artists that are engaged for the on-stage shows.
Exactly. So the difference from the shows, the artists that we hire for our shows, we mold them within a house troupe, if I may say, when we provide costume, makeup, training, etc. Whereas the special events, it's more plug and play performances. So therefore, the artists that we hire for performances, for special events, they've got their own costume, they've got their own music, they've got a performance that is called clé en main, so plug and play. We hire them, they come and they basically don't need to rehearse, and they're able to perform for the need that we have.
Terrific. I think I'd like to take a quick sec and just talk about that distinction because it's something that really exists across the industry very broadly. Um, and I think it's an important thing for an artist to understand where they fit into that ecosystem. And I don't think we need to have it be either or. I know a lot of really talented people who do have a very ready to go act, the plug and play concept, but who also have an interest in working within a troupe or in a group number or in a larger scale production. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. But I do think that as an artist, you need to understand the difference and be ready to present yourself appropriately depending on the need. So, with that, Julien, can you talk about what you're looking for, both for the, and I'm talking very practically when it comes to like a demo tape and the support material that helps you evaluate talent,
Yeah.
either to invite them to audition or whatever for the show, and then whether that's any different for your special event hiring.
Yeah. So for I'll speak more specifically here because we don't have a lot of shows that contain acrobatics. So basically, we've got the Lion King, Rhythm of the Pride Lands within our park, which is basically only aerialists. So the profile that we have are male and female. The female aerialists are mainly performing on a aerial spiral. And the guys are mainly performing on bungee straps and straps on duo. So that are those are the profiles that we look for our shows. And beyond the technical, I would say, aspect and the skills aspect of the artist, and that's where it becomes key that we need to see them live for most of them, is that we need to see how they can react, and that's what we see, what we've done together at Cirque as well, how they can mold within a cast. So those are seasonal shows. The shows are basically can be 4 months long or 8 months long, but we kind of change over the cast every time. So basically when we cast for now, like in June, and that's for our season in September, then we'll need to recast for the year after, and so on. So it's quite different because you can have several opportunities to actually join the show, because we run 2 to 3 auditions per year for new season when they decide to move on to a new season. For special events, it really depends on the need of the clients. So to be honest, as far as aerial and circus arts are concerned, we've got very often the dilemma and the issue of the stage space and the height, etc., and the timing that we have. So it's quite rare that we get to hire aerialists, for example, but we can have serial wheel artists, we can have magicians, we can have floor acts, not juggling yet, but we can have several floor acts mainly. And right now for special events, we tend to hire people from are actually based in France and even near Paris, just simply because sometimes it's quite last minute, and also the cost associated with it. So right now it's quite rare that we hire people from abroad for special events, but it may happen in the future.
Nice. You bring up an interesting point here because I think this is something that has always existed, but is perhaps exacerbated in the post-COVID era. We say in casting that timing is everything. You might be the perfect fit for a particular profile, but there's not a job opening, there's not a need in that moment. Doesn't mean it won't come. It just means that perhaps in that moment of audition, uh, there's not an obvious solution. What I think we're seeing now, of course, is what you're describing also with the proximity. It's a little bit the where you are. So I think that's something to consider as an artist, understanding that there are occasions, there are some types of jobs that have some physical constraints or parameters attached to how far they're willing to travel you, or just how accessible you are to meet the need, particularly when it's more of a corporate focus. So two separate sort of pieces in your portfolio.
Yeah, and to be specific as well on the Lion King part, that's where we open our applications, etc., to the world basically. But then it's super important for us to be able to see them live. So we don't want to prevent someone that lives in the US, for example, to apply. And then we discuss with those candidates and see, if they would be willing to involve the cost associated with traveling to France just for an audition. But we don't want to close the door to those talents as well, because I think it's important for us to have a diverse cast and to be able to have the best talent that there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it becomes, I think, a big decision for an artist, whether you're willing to make that investment. Because, like anything, whether it's, going off to university for 4 years or whatever, there is the investment component in your career. And then there's also, countering that with the practicality of it. Do you have the opportunity to travel to partake in auditions? Let's talk about auditions a little bit more in detail. Can you recount a little bit? Because I know we have a couple people with us actually that you will have the pleasure of seeing live. What can you describe about a day in the life of a Disney audition?
So it's not very different from the actual rest of the industry. There's some specific points that I will point out that are different. But we are lucky enough at Disney to be able to do the audition within the park, so we don't need to go into a circus school or into a space that we rent. The production is able to give us a time and space and technicians availability for us to do it within the theater, which is great. So actually a day of audition start usually with the movement dance part, so kind of teach choreography and see how people react to it. We don't request the aerialists to be dancers, but we want to see their ability to move and to work together with other people. Then you go to something that is quite specific to Disneyland, and you go into fitting a costume. So compared to other I would say other companies in the industry that we know well, like Cirque, for example, the costumes are fitted for the artists, but we've got so many turnover at Disneyland Paris that wouldn't be possible to do. So basically, one of the components to be able to be casted is also to fit in a costume and to see the looks of it, and that is validated by a show director. So basically, that is a part of the casting process. And then
Can I interject here? I want to ask you a quick question on that. When you're inviting people to audition, then, because we know this is the entertainment industry, we know that fit, like literally and figuratively, fit is really important. That could mean how you interact with other people as a human being, but it also, in this case, means how do you fit in the costume. So are you then already in anticipation of this step in the process? Are you looking at quite defined physical parameters? So, for example, individuals who are within a certain height range and this type of thing.
Yes, we do one for the performance part of things because we've got trims, etc. You know what trims are, the high trims and the low trims for the aerial apparatus. That's one component because obviously that's things that are rigged up and set up and won't move. So that is a part that is important for us. And the part of the costume is for the Lion King specifically. They've got several sizes, etc. So to my knowledge, it was never a no because of a costume that wouldn't fit. But yes, um, sorry, my English sometimes.
It's a consideration.
It's a consideration, exactly. Yes. But then I'll develop furthermore for stunt profiles, which are costumes that are very exigent in
Yep.
English. I think.
So very specific and
Specific.
defined.
Yeah, that could be a no, even though you've got the best skills that we want for that show. If we see that the costume doesn't look like the comic book, and the character doesn't look like the comic book, that could be a no, for example. So that is very important part of it. For the Lion King, not as much.
Okay. Interesting. So a little bit more flexibility with Lion King profiles. Whereas, and I found this really interesting because until we had talked about it, I did not know that there is, of course, within the overall governance, this IP. And so maybe we can just do a quick pause so people are understanding. When you talk about the stunt show, this is because the characters are known characters that are predetermined from film. Is that correct? It's from film?
Correct, yes. So based on comic books and based on the films, all the Marvel films, and basically we've got quite specific criterias as far as height, as far as body shape, as far as fitting within the costume. They have to wear masks. The mask has to fit a certain type of face. So that is, yeah, that gets our job a bit more difficult. But that is a very important part of our casting job to respect the IP.
Okay, so now we've had the movement and choreography. We've had the fitting, which is quite unique so early in the game.
Yeah.
Then what?
And then we move on to what the acrobats and aerialists are more used to. We go into the training room and jump on the apparatus that we have on stage. They kind of go and play with it, see how they can adapt to a spiral, for example, for the ladies. Someone that's done aerial hoop usually is very comfortable in that apparatus. So we see how they can create vocabulary, check on lines, but like upper body strength, etc., etc. For the guys, it's more the straps part of the audition, just to see in the training room, and then we move on stage and kind of play with the apparatus actual on stage. And same thing, there is a part of that is technical, but we want to see how you play with other candidates, how you play, because there's always a coach that is present as well that will play the part of an actual artist and see how you react with that person, check on your creativity, check on your teamwork, soft skills, etc., etc. And that part usually is the longest part of the audition. And during that part of the audition, we also actually, that is not during that part, but at the day of the audition, we give all the details about the contract, which is the daily fee and all the details that basically once you get to the audition, you know what you're audition for and what you can get involved in.
Is there such thing, and I ask this knowing that you're still reasonably new to this team,
Yeah.
is there a way to anticipate the success rate in an audition? Like how many people, for example, would be invited to a day?
So because we're using the theater and we want the audition to remain of quality, uh, we limit the amount of people per day because we actually have to break it down to several days. So we don't do callbacks because we do pre-selections on video. We already have a lot of information from that video, and we request elements that they have to put on those videos, which give us a lot of information beforehand. So once they actually get there, we know a lot. We can pretty much, I would say 70% whether it will be a yes or a no. But then that entire day will give us more information and actually help us make a final decision.
All right,
And
so what I'm hearing, and I'm sort of putting my casting hat back on, is that some of the keywords you mentioned earlier, which is creativity and teamwork, that's where artists in audition on the day really need to shine. Because let's face it, what we can say with transparency is that you've been invited for a reason. There's already a good chance that we
yeah,
expect you to succeed. And so now it's a little bit more perhaps about the human side.
yeah, the human side, and we've got limited spaces, so we've got limited positions. So obviously we invite more people that we have positions available to be able to have to make our selections. But it doesn't mean that that person will never, the person that doesn't get the contract will never get considered for the future. It's just a matter of, for that particular season, we want, you know, these 6 girls, even though we saw 12 amazing artists, you know what I mean? So it doesn't mean that it is a no forever. It means that at this point we've chosen those 6 artists, and you may have a chance to either re-audition or reapply, and you know, and have your chance again.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to stop with the questions and invite questions from all of you. So now's about the time to come off mute and put your cameras on. If you prefer to type a question, then I'll keep an eye on the chat and you're welcome to do that. But this is really your opportunity to ask something that matters to you. So who will be our first brave soul to pop their camera on and ask a question? I have many more questions I can ask on your behalf, but I really do encourage you guys to jump in the game. Okay, we have Shayna and then perhaps Jennifer, whose camera just came on. Perfect. Have at her.
Hi, I had one question going back to the height requirements when I was looking on the Disney Auditions website, and I was like, oh, I'm very interested in this, but I am 5 foot even, and when I translated the centimeters into American feet and inches, the minimum height requirement was 5'1". So are you very stringent on the height requirements at that point? It's like, okay, I'm 1 inch off. So does that mean don't apply? Or yeah, I didn't know what to do in that situation, being 1 inch shorter than the minimum.
Yes. So as I was, thanks for that question. It's very, very pertinent because we have that question come on quite often. So as I was saying, part of it is mostly the trim, because of the minimum trim that they can't change on the show, because the show has been running now for some years. And for them to have the trim being specific for certain artists make things very difficult. And that is why we put that minimum height. And I believe per even 1 inch, it can be a cutoff. Yes.
So to clarify, if I'm understanding this, because we've had similar issues, Julian and I, in the past, we're talking about being able to reach the equipment quite
Yeah.
simply. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
kind of the same that we had with Tornic, for example, other apparatus, and unfortunately sometimes even for 2 inches or 1 inch, it unfortunately makes the cut.
what I would say though, and this is not a Disney voice, is that never don't apply, because you just don't know. It could turn out that for a totally unrelated show, suddenly a need surfaces and Julian identifies, or a member of his team identifies, that in fact you're the perfect fit. So my general take on these kinds of things is yes, for that defined profile, not quite right, not the right parameters.
Exactly.
But
So and as I was saying, it's not Disney doesn't work like other companies in the industry with, like we call, permanent show, a show that will remain here for 15 years plus. That's why we call them seasons. It's because we never know if another season will happen, and we may create a different show with looking for different other profiles. So even though you apply, and possibly we will not invite you to an audition because of the specific criteria, you may become a very interesting profile for our future needs. So it's always very important to I don't want to, like Stacy said, don't apply. Disneyland Anaheim always had observatory and chasing golden horses theater.
let's do the chat questions real quick, and then I think Jennifer, am I understanding that you might have a question? Okay, so Julian, you're reading it currently, I think. So why don't you attack those chat room questions?
We used to go, question 1, what's the best way to get our videos in front of the people that book the corporate events? That's a very good question. So we've got a website called Disney Auditions, when you actually can create your profile. But whereas other companies, when you actually create your profiles and it gets evaluated by the casting team, for Disney, we don't do that. You actually have to apply to an audition. For special events, it's different. For special events, I encourage you to create your profile and send me an email or a Facebook message letting me know that you just created your profile. I think that's Scott's question, right? Yeah. That will help us get to know that you are there, and be able to, if it's a performance that we think would fit the special events for Disney, we would put you in our casting database and be able to call you whenever we have an opportunity that fits your talent.
Before you jump into the second question, I will sort of gratuitously take this opportunity to say all of that applies to the Circus Talk talent database as well. For Julian and for people like him from different places altogether who are looking for both, well, I would say all-inclusive talent and or acts ready to go in that plug and play manner, and or shows. So I really do encourage you guys are all here. I'm preaching to the choir already, but I really do encourage you to keep your talent profile on Circus Talk up to date with video. This is what talent seekers need to be able to understand what you can bring to the table. So if that's complementary to a company database, for example, great. You might be in theirs as well, and we strongly encourage that. But the independent nature of it means that there's a lot of different eyeballs taking a look at your profile, which of course just broadens the opportunities. Why don't we do question number 2 really quickly, and then we will scooch back to a live question.
I have 3 inches in Golden Horseshoe. We used to go there every time in Disneyland to make sure we got a reservation. We went Disneyland, there was no show. This beautiful, why not? So that's where I'm new enough not to be able to answer that question. I know that you're talking about the Wild West shows, right?
Coming off mute. For those of you who are wondering,
it's a theater in the
No, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go
am I unmuted?
It's a
Okay.
theater outside of park.
No, it's in the park. I want to say in the Western land. I can't remember what they called it, but it's called the Golden Horseshoe Review. And I was very excited when we went to Disneyland Paris because we always had such a great time in the Anaheim theater. And then they had no show. I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful theater, and there was no show. So I was just kind of shocked by that.
When was the last time that you came in Disneyland Paris?
It's been a few years. It's been a few years.
Because,
it was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, because if you were talking about the theater that I think you're talking about, that's where the Lion King now performs. So it used to be at the Frontierland Theater. We used to
Frontierland, yeah, that's it.
We used to have the Tarzan show there, and then there was a Peter Pan show for a moment, and then in 2019 they created the Lion King Pride of Rhythms of the Pride Lines, and that show runs since 2019. So I could answer your question.
I could. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Which sort of indirectly goes back to Shayna's question too, because as you can see, nothing is forever. It's very much a seasonal, sort of middle term, we might say. They don't tend to come and go in a single season, but it's certainly not a 20-year installation necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been patient. Jennifer, hit us with your question.
Hi. Although I'm living and working legally in Ireland right now, I only have an American passport. And I'm wondering, I've been hesitant to apply for jobs in mainland Europe because I would need to be sponsored for a visa. And I'm wondering if Disney is willing to do that and if they would prefer EU passports.
No, we do take care of that. And so there's absolutely no red flags for anyone from anywhere in the world to apply and to be considered and hired at Disneyland Paris for this type of shows. That is different for the special events. But for the acrobat, for the artists within the Lion King, we call what's called Passeport Talent, which actually gives you a visa to be able to work for Disney.
Amazing. Thanks.
And that is done once we get the final cast list and we are about to make a contracts offer, and then we take care of that process.
Great.
Great question, and super important because again, so many moving parts in the casting process. It's not always just about you and your amazing talent. There are sometimes occasions where the answer might have been no at a smaller company perhaps, or a company who for whatever reason just isn't there yet. So great to know that that's a non-issue and that it's a really international reach. We still have comfortably 12 minutes to go. So I would invite anyone else with any questions to either type them in or just have a chat. The other thing is we have 2 individuals, maybe even 3 actually, who came in just a little bit after we started. So you're more than welcome to come off your mute and pop your camera on to say hello. Okay. Who just put their camera on? Sorry, I'm trying to migrate
Debbie,
over to where I see her name.
Debbie, and she.
Yeah, Debbie.
Me, I can't see myself though, so I wasn't sure if I was on. Sorry.
You're good.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, I just had a question. Thank you for answering all those questions about visas, because that was one of my questions. What is the living arrangement for artists when they're once they're on contract? Is that something that they pay for? Is that something Disney provides, or to help them find the location?
Yeah, in compensation, by the artist pays for the accommodation, but it's provided by Disney. So we've got a residence that's actually a short bus distance to the park, and that's where we have the artists not living near Paris or Disneyland Paris that actually are able to live, and there's So we book in advance those accommodations, and then the artists, obviously it's not free. The artists have to pay for it, but it's a decent rent.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to jump in and either just say hello and introduce yourself, or bring forth a question, knowing that if you have a question, it's bound to also be in somebody else's mind. So you're doing us all a favor.
Scott, okay. I actually have a question for Scott. You're a magician, right?
Yes, sorry. Comedy magician.
Comedy magician, okay. And do you work as an intermittent in France, or do you work with your own company?
We are intermittent, yeah.
Okay. So
which
for
was
everyone,
fantastic.
intermittent is a very specific status that only exists in France, and that is the status of the artist, and that's the status that the artists at Disneyland Paris are hired for, and specifically for the Lion King, and as in for the artists, and for special events, it's the same. We hire people either if they are their own company we hire their company, or we hire them as intermittent.
We have a question from Allison. So the first one is, are there theme parks that hire groups, in their case specifically African Circus, to perform a show that they have created? So I think we're sort of talking about a ready-to-go product. Is there opportunity for that? And then part two, is there a database of theme parks around the world for the purpose of artists wishing to perform? So interesting, two totally different things. Julien, what can you say about the hiring of a pre-existing group?
I would say right now, in the history of Disneyland Paris, it never happened, but it doesn't mean that it will never happen. I think it did for special events, because I think they had the opportunity of having an African troupe that was performing in Paris at the not Cirque d'Hiver, but well, anyway, at the Festival Cirque de Demain, right before there was a show there, and there was the opportunity for them to be hired for a special event. But as far as shows are concerned, like longer term shows, I don't have the history of that, but we never say never. And as far as a database for theme parks around the world, I don't have a knowledge of that. I think each theme park have their database, and for instance, for Disney, our database is for all Disneys in the world. So when you apply for an audition, obviously you apply for the audition in the theme park at that particular location. But then if your profile is kept as a potential artist for the future, my colleagues in the US or in Hong Kong or in Shanghai or in Japan are able to see that profile.
Right.
Super important. And thank you for that precision, Julien, because again, it sort of goes back to Shayna's question. There might be a particular desire to apply for something active, but the reality is you want to be seen. And so here again, and I know it feels a little gratuitous, but to answer the theme park question, with new functionalities that are about to be launched on Circus Talk that are specially designed for talent seekers, we are very much in contact with those decision makers to invite them into the Circus Talk platform to take a look for talent. So while most large companies do have their own internal system, they will often use a secondary, the more independent Circus Talk platform to complement their search. So it's just a great opportunity to get yourself out there. Like, visibility is key. And we'll talk in other pro talks about networking, and it's sort of who you know, and demystifying the whole casting process. Bottom line is, you need a great toolkit of video and resume and a couple of strong images that allow yourself to be seen and found by the talent seekers. So really commit to yourselves. And I think here again, in this particular environment, I'm preaching to the choir, that it's so important to make sure that you have a really solid demo tape and package of tools so that talent seekers can do their job. I had a sense that maybe someone in the form of, oh, I'm not sure if it's Allison, you've just come on. Hi, nice to see your face.
Yeah, that's me. Hi, sorry I was late, and those were my questions. So thank you for the answers. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, TikTok, here we go. We have 5 minutes left, so let's make the most of it. Anybody else have anything they want to put out there?
And I just wanted to specify something compared to it's quite different from the rest of the industry. When you apply on the website, I just shared on the chat, unless it's for a special event, to be considered as an artist for special events, and that is quite different than the rest of the shows that we have. Creating your profile won't be enough unless you apply to an audition. Otherwise, your profile will not be evaluated. So therefore, it will just lie there in the nebulous world of the internet. And so it has to be specific for an audition that you see, either it's for Disneyland Anaheim or in Paris or anywhere in the world. But you actually have to apply to an audition to be seen by a talent seeker, to be able to be evaluated and then invited to an audition.
What's interesting about that is the need to do your homework. As an artist, as talent looking for work, every company has their way of doing stuff. So it's very much why we're doing this type of conversation environment, to help you figure that out and navigate. But it's really important that you do your homework and understand what the companies need, what they're looking for, respect what it is that they're asking for. It may not be exactly as the demo that you just cut, but it's worth tailoring it. If you really are after that job, help talent seekers do their job. Get them what they need, what they're looking for. Follow the routine that they have in place for their company. It will be different. It takes work. It takes a lot of effort. But this is very much you and the business of being an artist, getting yourself out there and letting people know that actually you can follow a note. It's remarkable how early it starts in the evaluation. If your demo meets the requirements, then you already have a check in that box, a check mark in that box. If you send a link to a 10-second clip on Instagram, that's not going to get you the job. So just really important to understand what talent seekers need to give yourself a leg up. Check in the chat. We're kind of coming to the end here. We have a question in the chat. No problem. I'll just read it. Professional Diablo performer. And so the question is that discipline, Diablo, in consideration for Disney shows?
Yeah, I just replied to him via the chat. So right now we don't have real opportunities for Diablo performers. But I encourage you to still create your profile, just because that would be more considered as special events. Like I say, special events, it's, I would say, 99% hired artists hired within France or close to the region of Île-de-France, which is close to Paris. But we never know for the future. And we tend to do special events outside of France now, so it is important for us to also have ready to go acts that are in other parts of the world. So right now at Disney Paris, we don't have opportunities, but I encourage you to create your profile and send me a quick email on my Circus Talk profile.
Awesome. Well, there was another question about cruise lines, which we're going to try to answer super quick. I do want to be very respectful of Julien's time. We are at the hour, so we need to wrap it up in just a sec. But the question was around Disney cruises. So what is the connection there? Do you know how the hiring happens for Disney cruises?
It's actually like a different company within the company. So Disney Cruise Lines are a totally different team, and I wouldn't be able to be specific on it, so I'd rather not give you wrong information. So unfortunately, I'm not able to let you know. But I believe they do work a little bit like we do. But to answer whether they only work with agencies or I don't know.
Alrighty. Okay, so we are pretty much at our hour, and obviously I'd very much like to thank Julien for his time. I'd also just like to let you guys know that we are taking a break for the summertime with Pro Talks, but we have a pretty awesome fall lined up. And the goal is to make this as diverse and far-reaching as possible. So I have some really terrific European guests who will be joining us when we start back up in September. Please keep an eye on the platform when we have those dates officially confirmed with the right people in the right slot. We'll make sure that you know about it. And one of the things we tend to drop at the very end of this is if there is something that strikes you, if you do have a question, as Julien mentioned, he's got a profile on Circus Talk, so you can just message him in the platform. You're also very welcome to email us, and we pass the questions on to our Pro Talk guests, so that if there's something really pressing that you forgot to ask or you think of later, the door's open for you. The communication channels are now open, so take advantage of that, because that's what this networking piece of business is all about. Thank you, Julien, so much, and thanks to all of you who are with us in the room, and thanks also to those of you who watch a little bit later on.
Well, thanks, Stacy, for inviting me. Thank you, Circus Talk. Thank you, everyone. I was very happy to meet all of you, and looking forward to have other opportunity to exchange either on Circus Talk or other platforms. And looking forward to meet some of you. I think I see Jennifer in a couple of weeks. So.
Have fun.
All right. Thank you very much.